Hello everyone, Guardian E here with another guide and build breakdown, this time for Crimson Flash Marisa, the latest Tempest Trial reward unit in Fire Emblem Heroes. Marisa hails from Sacred Stones as a member of the Garrux Mercenaries, and her moniker, Crimson Flash, stems from her fabled speed as a Swordmaster. So, how does she fare in the transition to Fire Emblem Heroes? Let's take a closer look. At 5-star level 40, Marisa sports 46 HP, 30 attack, 36 speed, 30 defense, and 21 resistance. All things considered, her speed stats, not bad. In line with Masked Marth, the original Tempest Trial reward, but sacrificing some offensive strength for bulk. Marisa is essentially a free-to-play, sturdier Athena, featuring a slightly lower offensive line while boasting some increased HP and defense. Being a native Wodao user, Marisa is relatively low investment. She starts out with probably the best weapon you could put on her, given her stat spread and abilities. Marisa has access to Infantry Pulse, previously only accessible by Summer Xander and Dorcas, and maybe this is where her Crimson Flash comes into play. As long as she has 1 HP over an infantry ally, that ally will start turn 1 with their special cooldown lowered by 1. This ability also stacks with other cooldown lowering skills like Quicken Pulse and other infantry pulses. Given her decently high HP stat, Marisa can utilize Panic Ploy fairly well on an infantry team. Given her stat line and native infantry pulse, Marisa synergizes surprisingly well with dragons in a hybrid team. We'll get a bit more into that later. So let's take a look at some builds. First up is a relatively low investment build revolving around proccing Marisa's special as quickly and often as possible, which will let her strike with the additional 10 Wodao damage to supplement her otherwise mediocre attack. Fury complements her otherwise balanced stats and will allow her to tank more hits on both player and enemy phase. The Fury damage itself will also help Marisa reach the threshold for her B slot, Wrath. Once in Wrath range, Marisa will get an additional 10 damage on top of the Wodao damage, and she gets a -1 cooldown at the start of every single turn. Wrath is currently only available on Nephany, and a more budget alternative would include Desperation or Swordbreaker to let her attack uninhibited, or to secure more doubles on some of the meta reds that outspeed her. It's really hard to recommend anything over Infantry Pulse in her C slot considering how useful it is as a support option. It's a very unique ability that allows for very interesting team dynamics, so I'd recommend keeping it, but you could also swap it for any sort of buff that you need on your team. And since we're trying to secure doubles, the Speed Refinement for her Wodao Plus and the Speed Seal are both great options for her, though the Seal is a bit of a flex spot should you find something that fits your team better. There is some debate over whether Moonbow or Glimmer is the better overall 2 cooldown special, and for Marisa's stat line, it really depends. Let's take a closer look at how the special damage is calculated. As you can see based on these calculations, the damage of Moonbow versus Glimmer changes based upon the enemy defensive stat. At 25 defense, Moonbow will do 64 damage for Marisa, whereas Glimmer will do 68 damage. If the enemy has 30 defense, Moonbow will do 66 damage, and Glimmer will do 65 damage. And if the enemy has 35 defense, Moonbow will do 67 damage, and Glimmer will do 63 damage. So as you can see, Moonbow performs better the higher defensive stats of your opponent. Glimmer performs better if you're facing a lower defense enemy. With Marisa's relatively mediocre attack stat, you really can't go wrong either way, it's more of a matter of personal preference. It may help that Marisa comes with Glimmer already in her kit. I should mention that 35 defense stat really isn't all that far-fetched nowadays with skills like Steady Breath and Close Counter, as well as weapon refinements. Next up is a build that gives Marisa some interesting utility application. Her higher HP allows her to run Panic Ploy to take care of certain emblem buffing team configurations involving Hones and Fortifies, as well as Blade Tome users. Infantry Pulse, with her higher HP, allows her to give all infantry allies -1 cooldown on their specials at the start of turn 1, making the entire team more of a threat. Since Marisa has fairly bulky defensive stats, She can tank and survive normal exchanges. Along with the Fury recoil, this allows her to reach Wrath range. And once she enters Wrath range at 75% HP, she gets both a plus 10 damage boost to her special, and also gets an automatic -1 cooldown on her special at the start of every turn. And what this means is that Marisa can stall by making swift retreat on certain maps to continue lowering her cooldown as necessary, allowing her to charge up her bonfire for an extremely powerful blow that can take out even bulky blue units. I find Bonfire to strike the nice balance of power and cooldown for this build, but you could also go with Ignis, which will obliterate any unmerged arena-built unit on initiation, except a few variations of Noe and Effie. Using Ignis procs a 49 damage special when including Wodao and Wrath bonus damage, on top of her 47 attack, which ends up being 96 total damage. Of course, that requires a great deal of charging with Wrath active, but it can be done in a pinch. And speaking of Ignis, Marisa can run this steady breath build, similar to Dragon builds, but lacking that built-in distant counter. If you want to run an enemy phase Marisa, this is likely your best bet. She's tanky enough to survive the first physical initiation and counter with a powerful Ignis. It's an expensive build, but one that will allow her to feel right at home with enemy phase infantry dragons. Quick Riposte ensures the double, and the Close Defense Seal adds that much needed boost to her defense stat, and strengthens the overall power of the Ignis proc. She can alternatively run Panic Ploy Seal on this build, debuffing pesky Blade Tome users and further protecting her allies from powerful nukes. Given her stat spread and otherwise lack of movement-based buffs, Marisa really excels with a few specific builds for maximizing special damage and supporting her allies with Infantry Pulse and Panic Ploy. In this vein, picking her allies is as important as picking her build. So, who pairs best with Marisa? Dancers like Performing Arts Azura and Ninian are always a good choice, and are especially handy if you opt to retreat and charge Marisa's special with Wrath to take on particularly tanky opponents. As mentioned before, infantry Manichetes like Noe, Female Corrin, Adult Tiki, Young Tiki, and Ninian can all take advantage of her infantry pulse, as they all have at least 1 HP less than Marisa at neutral. Unfortunately, Faye's HP stat is just a shy too high to be able to enjoy the -1 cooldown effect. Characters that rely on their powerful specials like Brave Ike and Regular Ike will all appreciate the increased cooldown effect of Infantry Pulse, as well as another Wrath user like Nephany. Similarly, Sonya, whose Dark Excalibur is essentially a tome with a Wodao effect, would benefit greatly from Infantry Pulse, as it allows her to utilize more powerful specials than her commonly used Moonbow. She could instead opt to run Iceberg or even Glacies on enemy phase with Quickened Pulse. Bride Cordelia is another fun option, as Quickened Pulse, Infantry Pulse, and Brave Bow would allow her to proc a 1-turn Luna on player phase. And that concludes my quick breakdown and build guide video for Crimson Flash Marisa. I hope it was helpful in formulating your own builds, and if it was, please let me know what you decide to run in the comments below. If you're interested in more Fire Emblem Heroes content, please feel free to like the video and subscribe, as it really greatly helps out the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, protect those skies.